talking to Jamie Hall. He is the voice of the EC Glass Hilltoppers on WNI with Dennis Carter. Let's talk a little bit about the Hilltoppers season. I don't know that you can say, 100% great because they have a loss on the resume, but still a pretty darn good Hilltoppers team. How would you grade them?
Well, like you said, you can't quite say A+ because they do have one loss, and it was to the rival, the crosstown rival Heritage. But I think you got to say a solid A, especially coming off of the disappointment of the early playoff exit last year, and the fact that they've gotten themselves at the top of the regional rankings right now, and home field advantage at least in the first round of the playoffs, and they're in a really good spot. And yeah, they'd love to have that night, September 16th. They'd love to have that night back. The offense was so stagnant, but give credit to the Pioneers of Heritage. They had a great defensive game plan and came in and took an offense that's putting up 49, 56, 63, 55 points a game, and they held them to nothing, which was, I think, shocking. You and I talked about it before that game. We thought it had the chance of being a 45-43 final score, and it ended up being 12-0, and it was really 6-0 because 6 of those points came really late in the football game. So, yeah, you can't say A+ because I know they'd like to have that one back, and that one's going to, even though when you're talking about state championships, these teams are not going to meet. You don't have to worry about, okay, we're going to have to get past them to win a state championship. And you don't lose a lot of points losing to Heritage because they're such a good team too in their division. So, but that is a tough one. That's one that I think if you ask those players, they're going to go, anyway, we can play that game again. But outside of that, they beat a Lord Botetourt team that has proven to be very, very good. They beat a Gretna team to death that, I know it's talking about stepping down a division, but they just went on the road at Gretna and took care of them. And Gretna's a playoff team. GW, they're down. They're down. But you do what you have to do in that game. You went 49-0. Even if they're down, you accomplish what you should accomplish there. And then skip past the Heritage game. They took care of Liberty as you would expect. Amherst County, who I tell you, that's a team that I wouldn't want to have to play in the playoffs. They're a good team. They run all over the field, and EC Glass able to hold them to 7 points, win that game fairly comfortably, 24-7. JF, they did what you got to do to JF, and they really took it to Rustburg too. They got some tough games coming up. Brookville on the road and LCA at home. Those aren't going to be easy wins. Matter of fact, as far as the LCA game, you're going to be an underdog in that game if there was a line, and that would be a huge win for that program to win that game. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, there's been so much accomplished at EC Glass, but as far as the context of this season, it would be a huge win for the program, because also that would be rolling you right into the playoffs. And again, you're not going to face LCA again in the playoffs, but you're talking about or Brookville, but you're talking about rolling with some momentum. And so if they could somehow win these final two games, it would be. I think you go A+ at that point for sure. I think you go the Heritage loss was definitely a blip, and you go from A to A+. Maybe if you go 1-1 in these final two games, I think you still say if the loss is LCA, you're still going to give them an A for the season. If you lose to Brookville and LCA, then we might have to talk B+ or something. We might have to change the grade. But it's still been a solid year.
The thing too about the Brookville thing is with the connections of Woody having coached at Brookville and having played at Brookville, I think it's been enough years, but still that lingers. I think to where it's a very big game for Brookville. When Woody still, comes over there to town. Like you said, LCA is going to beat a lot of people. But, the one thing you said, and I have to keep myself in mind about this too, because we've covered all levels of sports. For high school kids to win the games you're supposed to win, it's not as easy, I don't think, as it would be on a college level or pro level. So even though we talked about the GWs, the JFs, and the so on and so forth, those are not given games. I mean, still give credit, like you said, to EC Glass for going out and taking care of business.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you look at it, and you also got to be mindful. You're not trying to run up a score,
right?
You don't want to. I think the thing that it gets to is you get that running clock in the second half, and at that point you just want to get home. And if the final score is 35-0, you don't want anybody to get hurt on either team, and you're just, let's get this game over with. And the fact that that's happened for EC Glass 5 times this year, that they've had that running clock in the second half, I don't care who you're playing. If you get to a running clock 5 times in a season, you're doing something right. And then you're also able to get some other kids some experience, get them some throws. A guy like Max Callaway can get in and come in and relieve George White and get some reps and get some experience, because he's clearly going to have to at some point take over this program as far as being the quarterback when George graduates coming up soon. And so, it's just all things around, all aspects of the football program are benefited by you taking care of business in the first half against teams that you should beat, and beat them handily enough that you get that running clock and you're able to get some reserves in the second half of the football game.
Yeah, and I'm not going to beat that Heritage game to death, but I think a lot of people from EC Glass probably needed to recover just as much, not maybe physically as much as they did emotionally too, off that Heritage game. I've seen EC Glass once since then, and to me it looked like George White recovered. What have you seen out of him after a game where Heritage did not make him look that great?
Yeah, George, I'm going to tell you, George is he's going to be a good college quarterback, and I don't know the depth chart at William and Mary right now. I don't know how quickly he would have the opportunity to play or compete for the starting job, but I think by the time he's done down there, he's gonna be a good quarterback for them at the FCS level. Yeah, he's a solid guy. Now, he's got so many weapons around him that it's almost like the luxury there is crazy, because if you look, and not just the receiving core, the thing that's so surprising is you think of EC Glass and you think of this passing attack, and it's great. They've got guys, I don't know, 6-8 guys that can catch the football on a consistent basis. But this season they've had 20 rushing touchdowns and 17 passing touchdowns. The running game has been just as impressive for them.
Right.
And George has been able to get some of those himself. Now, he's not going to break a lot of 40, 50-yard runs, but you get it inside the red zone, and he's a threat to put it on the ground and run it in the end zone. And you get anywhere near the goal line, and he's a big enough kid that he can, sneak it in no problem. And so, but yeah, the fact that he's got a guy like Mike Thomas in the backfield behind him, 10 touchdowns this year, and we've given Mike Thomas the nickname of backfield, because he's either blasting out of it when he's on offense or he's blasting into it when he's playing defense. He has a knack for getting these tackles for losses on the defensive side, and boy, he's just almost impossible to bring down when he's running the football on the other side of things. So I think as much as you can put a little bit of it, you can put a lot of it in that Heritage game on the passing attack not being there, but the running game wasn't going either. And
right.
and the fact that I think so much of the success of this EC Glass program outside of the Heritage game is the fact that if they decide to run it like they did very well, I mean, just dominated the ground in a game up at Amherst. If they decide to run it, they can put 250 rushing yards on the board. And the minute you get comfortable that you think that they're going to run the ball and you put too many in the box, well, George White's going to have an absolute field day throwing it downfield. And, vertical, in the flat, screen plays. If you pressure him, he's going to roll out, maybe hit a guy, maybe not, maybe run for 15, 20 yards himself. And so it's a pretty dynamic offense, and so I think that really shows you how impressive Heritage's defense was that night to be able to stop them.
And let me go on record as being the voice of Heritage. that, I think that Jug Bowl is a big, big deal. I think EC Glass could win the state title, but that Jug Bowl is going to be what those kids might remember down the road, and that's only by me talking to other people and them telling me what they had thought about the Jug Bowl. But I will say this. I think in any level, if you lose to a team, the last thing you want to have happen is that team go to pot, because then it kind of looks like a really bad loss. With that being said, I don't think the Heritage loss looks like a really bad loss, because Heritage has done anything but gone to pot.
Oh, they played great, and I mean, you were at the LCA game. How about that? That was the game of the year. And as far as there've been a couple pretty fun games in the Seminole District this year, but that was definitely one of the games of the year.
Yep. And credit to Hilltoppers, like you said. I mean, I think they could have really hung their heads and felt, all kinds of ways after losing the city rivalry game, but they have done anything but feel sorry for themselves, at least on the scoreboard. They're making other people feel sorry on the scoreboard, but not the Hilltoppers. Now, when we look ahead to Friday's matchup against Brookville, and maybe even next week against LCA, if I said to Jamie Hall, what is one thing EC Glass has to do in the next two games to have a shot to win? What's your answer?
Well, I'd say this is no disrespect to Brookville, but I don't know that it really matters as far as what's on the other side of the football. I think if EC Glass plays up to their level of ability on both sides, I think they win that football game. And again, that's no disrespect. Brookville's had a great season, and I think they certainly could win the game on Friday night. I'm just saying, I think at this point, EC Glass is at a level that now LCA is a different story. Now that's a little bit of a different conversation. I think in that game you're talking about being the favorite to being the underdog. In that game against LCA, you're going to have to do some special things defensively as well. And something that is important, and I don't have a status update, but McQuan Farmer was out in the last game against Rustburg, and that game was tied 14-14 in the first half. And I really think a lot of it was the Rustburg was able to do some things offensively that they might not have been able to do if that entire line of EC Glass, was healthy in that game. And so the word I heard was that he probably will be back, maybe even this week, but certainly by the LCA game. And if that's the case, then that's a pretty big deal, because he is a part of a very good defensive line that I think, with all the offensive accolades that the Hilltoppers are given, and rightfully so, I think one thing that's overlooked is just how good their defense is,
right?
And specifically how much they control the trenches with guys like Farmer, Nick Watson, Jerry Cashwell, and others. They are a very, very good defensive unit, and then they get some pressure on the quarterback. They force quarterbacks to get uncomfortable, and then they get picked in the back, whether it's Vari Gilbert or Mike Thomas again, Chris Walker Wells, Mosby, Wood, whoever,
right,
on the back end, getting some interceptions because of the pressure that front line can put on teams.
And, you're kind of newer to the Seminole District in terms of broadcast. I mean, you've been doing a great job when I've heard you, but one thing I think people always say is wait until the playoffs, because other teams will not have seen so-and-so speed, whether it be Heritage Glass, LCA, whoever's. But I think they're always talking about the, running back speed or the speed offensively. But I think you hit the nail on the head right there. Defensive speed could be what kills some of these teams that play the Seminole teams, because, with all due respect, they haven't seen that defensive speed throughout the regular season.
Yeah.
So basically what I just said is Jamie Hall is really smart, people. Listen to him.
I don't know about that. I tell you, having Dennis Carter sit beside me all season, and this guy, you talk about having a wealth of knowledge that goes back to the 80s, and he can talk about the historical significance, but then he can also kind of give some perspective of just how good the football is in Central Virginia. And I think, I don't know, the casual person in Lynchburg might take it a little bit for granted, but we talked about this before district play started, and I forget, I should have written it down, but the Seminole district, and this was even with Liberty Bedford not having a win at that point, but the district's record was like 80%. They were winning 80% of the games. And then, of course, once you get into district play, you beat up each other, and obviously the district record is going to be 50%. That's just the way it is. It's going to bring the 80% down because it's got to be 50% once you start playing each other. But how good the Seminole was compared to the competition that they were playing from, and I know sometimes you're going out of the area a little bit to have to play a game or two here and there, and Glass didn't have to go particularly far. They went as far as Lord Botetourt. I know some other teams had to travel a little bit further than that. But they were winning some good games out of district. The Seminole district is really good football. And so I think sometimes when you're a Jefferson Forest and you go, well, we started off so good. Well, then you had to start playing district games, and it's tough. It's really, really a tough district to win football games in, and JF is better than their record shows right now because they're having to play in such a tough district, and they're moving in the right direction. And you look at a team like Brookville's kind of in that same boat. Their district record is not going to be as good as their overall record percentage wise because they're playing some outstanding teams in the Seminoles. So and then having Dennis that can kind of put all this and pull all this into perspective because he remembers what happened 5 years ago and he remembers what happened 20 years ago. And he can kind of go, well, I remember, when Heritage won this and EC Glass won that, and back in those days, this is the way it was. And I think the one thing that's a pretty safe bet is no matter how far you go back in history, football in Central Virginia has been good. Maybe who was good has changed at times over the years, but just in general, there's some really good football in and around the Lynchburg area.
Well, I'll let you know a little thing here. I am 43. Dennis is a little bit older than me. I have never been out of Lynchburg, though. So I remember a lot of things, but Dennis's expertise is he can use the I was there type thing a lot more than I can, which, Dennis has such a great memory, and it is such a great resource for you. But Jamie Hall is one of the best there is, too. You can listen to him do EC Glass football during the fall. If you want to hear him do other things during the winter and spring, he'll be there. Jamie Hall, the man, we thank you for your time.
Hey, I appreciate it, Bob. This has been fun.